Hello everybody, this broadcast is brought to you by these two European stars that Aberdeen, the only club in Scotland to have two of them. Thank you very much. For the last 20 years, one way or the other, in written or broadcasting form, I've been covering Joan Laporta. Today he gave one of the most extraordinary press conferences, nearly 2 hours of it, that I've ever seen him give. And there aren't many in my reporting lifetime that match up to the undulating, coruscating, volcanic highs and lows of this eruption from Barcelona's president. The situation is that they won the Super Cup in Saudi Arabia on Sunday night, but there's been all the Dani Olmo and Pau Victor arguments, deregistration, re-registration, the government interference, La Liga now taking Barcelona and the government to court to say this is not right, these two players can't be re-registered. But it's also now irregular that Laporta comes out and speaks at length. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the background to this man who, when he was at school, nicked the answers to a test to distribute amongst all his classmates because they all believed the teacher was being unfair. Hey teacher, leave them Catalan kids alone. He got kicked out of school from that. He was often sent home from school. He's about the same age as me, and therefore when he was young there was still obligatory military service in Spain. When he was conscripted to the army, there were various things, including a hunger strike amongst fellow recruits because they were being forced to eat camel meat, apparently. Anyway, the food wasn't good enough. There was a hunger strike. They moved him closer to home to a place, an area called Pedralbes in Barcelona, where variously he would nick off, absent without leave, and try and get a mate to cover it by, when roll call came in, saying the sergeant would shout Laporta, and he was present. He also nicked off on holiday to Egypt with his girlfriend and was put in the Clink, the glass house, the military jail. These are background details. I think he's a rogue and a rascal. I attended his very first inauguration back in, it would have been autumn 2003. And that was held up because he and his directors didn't have enough money to lay down as personal guarantees, something you have to do when you become a director of Football Club Barcelona. From that day to this, including the gazpacho night, which is the gazpacho that was served to the fans who turned up, to a 12:10 midnight and 10 kick-off against Seville in 2004 because of a row between the two clubs, and kicking out Leo Messi in a manner which was wholly undignified and, from my perspective, if not completely unjustifiable, barely justifiable, lying to Messi and his clan that they were going to be renewed, changing his mind and the board's mind, and then telling Messi when he came back from holiday, you're out, we're not renewing you. And Messi leaving in tears, in floods of tears and bitterness. Today's press conference covered a host of subjects, and I'm going to try and take some of them at a clip. He's pugnacious about the fact that for him the Dani Olmo and Pau Victor documentation and guarantees were made on time, that is before the end of play on December 31st, and various things just didn't click together that shouldn't mean, in his view, that Olmo and Victor had their registrations taken away. For example, all the documentation about new income being in, but the money not being in the account because it was Hogmanay, 31st. Banks were closed. Everything else in place, according to him. He's claiming that over 4 days there was an ebb and flow of documentation back between Barcelona and La Liga, which eventually they augmented by saying, well, show us proof of some of this money, which apparently, according to Laporta, wasn't a criterion which had been used before. So he then went on to say he was grateful to clubs like Real Madrid who haven't protested publicly. He actively said, I'm grateful to those who haven't come out and condemned this government action over Dani Olmo. In that case, he's talking about clubs like Sevilla, Espanyol, Atleti, but He actively thanked Real Madrid. He thanked certain components of the press room who he said had been intelligent and patient and loyal, and had a go at others, saying there's been too much bile, there's been hatred, people have tried to liquidate the club, there have been vested interests coming to get me. It was, if you're a great Shakespeare fan, it was a real... Do you remember the great Shakespearean character Kenneth Williams? Infamy, we've all got infamy. I wish I could say that in Catalan, but I don't quite know how to do word jokes that are that complicated. He went on about the forward sale of VIP seats in the renewed Camp Nou, and claimed that the 100 million which is coming into Barcelona is simply a fee for the right to exploit the worth of those seats, that there's another 300 million coming in, and that there's a mechanism which allows the worth of these VIP seats to fluctuate depending on market conditions. And he quoted that this is a very normal procedure in terms of how the American sports market handles things. Take that with a pinch of salt, take that with toast and butter, whichever one you want to feel like. He also went on about, I didn't say we'd be in the Camp Nou and playing again by the turn of the year, i.e. a deadline that's passed. He said, we wanted to be, unless there were imponderable factors, and there have been. He was on his feet punching and swinging at real enemies, hidden enemies, thanking Olmo and Pau Victor for their patience. It was a press conference where he was in turn sparkling in the eye because of humour and taking the mick out of himself a little bit. He did this on camera when the verdict for Dani Olmo came through, and he said that's called a butifarra. I don't know why, but a butifarra is also a sausage. So they asked him about the butifarra. He said, well, I like my butifarra with, did he say with chips or with salsa? Jokey. Yeah, very good indeed. Denied absolutely the accusation that he'd been verbally abusing and swearing at various members of the Spanish FA from the regions who were in Jeddah for the final. There were printed and broadcast accusations that the Federation was thinking about taking an expedient action against him. He denied that absolutely. He said it simply wasn't true. He's an artful dodger of a man. But again, the truth is, temporarily he's won the Dani Olmo argument. He's taken in 1.7 billion from Nike. He claims he's going to take in upwards of 400 million for selling the VIP seats. His appointment of Flick, as ungainly as his treatment of Xavi was at the moment, has yielded a trophy and some improvements in the play. I close by saying, if you want to go and read the ESPN FC article, please do. Just think about how lucky Laporta is. He takes over at a stage when Barcelona were ruinous in 2003, in the middle of a 6-year period without any trophy. Their financial situation was wholly different from now, in that it was running out of the petrol to keep the engine going. They were running out of funds to pay salaries. Debt and debt management over the 2003 to 2021, I think he took over, was it? March 2021. Debt management in those 18 years has changed completely. So what he took over was a Barcelona 1.2 billion in debt globally, different brands of repayment. And yet he's beginning to make an impact financially. And just like in 2003, he opened the cupboard and saw a young Leo Messi. Taking over here, he's opened the cupboard and found a young Lamine Yamal, who is genuinely going to be, it is already utterly extraordinary. What did Napoleon say about, I'd rather have a lucky general than a good one? Fuck me, Laporta is one lucky general.